But I want to now, as I bring in our guests on this special show, I want to quote what David Coleman Headley said, what he told his interrogators, and what Rakesh Maria, who interrogated Kasab and then investigated this entire case as crime branch chief and later Mumbai police commissioner, what he wrote about this, because I want to focus on the aspect of the bogey of Hindu terror that these Pakistani terrorists were trying to spread through their masters. What did Headley say? He said, and I quote, "I purchased the red and yellow wristband," which means Kalava, that sacred thread. "I forget its name. I thought that the 10 youth could wear it as a cover and that people would think they are Indians," unquote. Ajmal Kasab was given a Hindu identity card so that he would appear as a Hindu. Now, Rakesh Maria, former Mumbai police commissioner, said Pakistani terrorist Mohammad Ajmal Kasab, had he not been caught alive, 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks would have been dubbed the handiwork of Hindu terrorists. Kasab was among the group of 10 that carried out the terror attack on Mumbai in November 2008 and the lone lashkar-e-taiba terrorists captured alive. They were given Hindu names and red-colored strings to tie on their wrist. In his memoir, in that book that he wrote, Let Me Say It Now, Rakesh Maria, who was then the Mumbai police crime branch chief, he investigated 26/11, and I had the privilege of interviewing him and meeting him several times after 26/11, including on its anniversaries for several years, and late Himanshu Roy. Now, Rakesh Maria in that book writes, Lashkar-e-Taiba wanted him to be killed, that is Kasab, to be killed as a Bengaluru resident, Samir Dinesh Chaudhary, with that red thread around his wrist to portray that as Hindu terror. But their plan apparently did not succeed because the fact was Kasab hailed from Faridkot in Pakistan. Now I want to quote him. "If all had gone well, Kasab would have been dead with that red string tied around his wrist like a Hindu. We would have found an identity card on his person with a fictitious name, Samir Dinesh Chaudhary, student of Arunoday Degree and PG College, Dilsukh Nagar, Hyderabad, 500060, resident of 254 Teachers Colony, Bengaluru." Maria writes, "There would have been screaming headlines in newspapers claiming how Hindu terrorists have attacked Mumbai. Over-the-top TV journalists would have made a beeline for Bengaluru to interview his family and neighbors," he wrote in his book. And I want to quickly bring in Dr. Vikram Singh into this conversation. Dr. Vikram Singh, it is thanks to that supreme sacrifice of Assistant Sub-Inspector Tukaram Ombole that Kasab was caught alive. He took a hail of AK-47 bullets to his chest but caught him alive, or we would have been saddled with 26/11 being labeled as Hindu terror and Pakistani getting away with murder and terror.
Gauravji, I must compliment you for taking up this very sensitive and unpalatable issue as nobody else has. So my salutations to you. Nobody else has raised this topic. Now to the fact that, yes, I salute the brave heart who took the entire burst of the magazine on his chest, literally and metaphorically biting the bullet. But for him, things would have been very, very different than what we are seeing them today. Yes, there was an insidious attempt to buy the wristbands from Siddhivinayak temple and to guise the identity and to give it a different color altogether. But for this fortuitous intervention, things would have been very different. And I also compliment Rakesh Maria for coming out with his book. And indeed, it's a very interesting read. But the fact of the matter is why we have the likes who say Osama G, Hafiz G, they go head over heels to praise the world's the most wanted and the most hated terrorist. And then thereafter, you may recall that after the incident was over, they commissioned a book to be released by no other than a very important leader of a national party. And then it was released, giving the impression that the entire thing was saffron terror. Now, coming back to the whole thing, David Coleman Headley and also the man who was handling him and facilitating his visit, did we not see the presence of a very major film director and actor and his son, taking him around Mumbai like his local guide, making him a member of a local gym, taking him from all around the sensitive area, the Chadab House, the Trident, the Taj Hotel, and also the Evorai Hotel? What business did he have? And then the audacious manner in which Tahawwar Rana opened his first world immigration center in Tadadev, that also somebody was greasing the palms and somebody was facilitating these anti-national elements to open shop here. And the manner in which they got out about it and made a recce and were in contact with the Huji, Harkatul Ansar, and Lashkar-e-Taiba, and the shameless manner
Okay.
in which their cohorts were praised after the incident and tried to change the
Okay, give me
entire
a
color
moment as
of.
we put out that first picture on India Today of that Pakistani terrorist Tahawwar Hussain Rana in the custody of the National Investigation Agency. In that picture you see, of course, just give us a moment as we rotate it. This picture has just come in. It has just come into India Today, and we wanted you to see it first. We want our viewers to be first to see news as it happens. This Pakistani terrorist Tahawwar Hussain Rana with a Canadian passport, he used that Canadian passport to breeze in and out of India, to open a company in India, a branch of a company. He opened the office in Chicago, and I visited that office in Chicago. I've reported from that office. This is that first picture that you see of Tahawwar Hussain Rana, and in just a moment we'll see his face, perhaps. These are NIA officers who are holding him physically now as they take him for a medical examination and then subsequently to take him to court. And Sushant Sareen, there are many, many gaps that will be filled. The point that Dr. Vikram Singh was raising about that bogey of Hindu terror, Rana and Headley knew India well, and they knew how India could be gamed. Use Pakistani terrorists and blame it on India and blame it as Hindu terror. Sushant Sareen.
Gaurav, I think we need to start asking the question, were they gamed or were they told that this is how this will play out? That there will be a certain lobby in India that will use these particular symbols and try and change the narrative. And subsequently also, as Dr. Singh very correctly puts it, even much later, there were people who were trying to spread this canard and trying to construct all kinds of conspiracy theories. It was so mindless, but they continued to insist on it. Their hatred and their dislike for a particular ideology or for a particular party was far more than whatever love they had for their country, if at all they had any love. So it is very clear where these guys were coming from. And Gaurav, what is even worse is that 26/11 wasn't the first time this happened. This has happened in the past as well, from the 1993 bomb blast in Mumbai, in which hundreds of people were killed. You go out
257, sir.
Subsequent events. Again, you try and deflect the Samjhauta Express. You try and deflect a particular investigation. You try and sow doubts. You change the complete direction of an investigation and try and absolve the guys who actually did what they did, even though the UN had actually identified the mastermind of the Samjhauta Express incident. There were people in India, including in the government. Now, when a government of the day, for settling political scores, starts derailing investigations and taking them to another side simply because of political reasons, then I think serious questions need to be asked: who they were batting for, what they were trying to play at. And I think this is something, it's deeply unfortunate that this kind of a thing would happen, because terrorism is terrorism, right? Everybody keeps saying, if it is terrorism, then how come you try and create that in 1993, there was an additional bomb blast which took place in a Muslim area to try and show that this was a secular act of terrorism? That we have journalists who insist that Dawood Ibrahim is a very secular guy. Tiger Memon was a very secular guy until he turned a fanatic, right? We have people making those cases. So, if you have a country like this, you have a fifth column in a country like this, it becomes so much easier for terrorists to carry out their dastardly plans. And then, of course, you make a show and dance about that, yes, we will take action. But what action did you take that when you were advised that this is Pakistan? The initial reaction from the government of India at that point of time was, we suspect non-state actors. Why did you suspect non-state actors? Could a non-state actor carry out as monumental an attack as this without the complicity and the connivance of the state in Pakistan? It is inconceivable for something like that to happen. That was one. So you tried to, absolve the Pakistani state. You did that. Then what did you do? That you were told that let's go and attack Pakistan and teach them a lesson. What did you do? You asked a visiting delegation of Americans for permission. Can I do this? Do you ask another country for permission to take your revenge? Do you do this? Does any government do something like this? So, we've had this kind of a namby-pamby culture in this country, which is why everybody thinks that this is a country you can just kick it and, get away with it. Look at the bloody Pakistanis today, yeah? They're so shameless, these wretches. But we have nothing to do with this guy. He's a Canadian citizen. Arey Baba, your guys were involved in the plot. Your guys were in communication with this guy. Your guys were telling him what to do and what not to do. He was hatching and arranging the logistics because of your guys telling him this, and you very simply and very blithely you say we have nothing to do with this. They're so shameless, these wretches. And you will have people in India say, but we cannot be always on the tenterhooks with the Pakistanis. We have to make up with them. So let us start with playing cricket with them. Let their actors come out here. We will go down. So, if the moment you do something like this, the other guy thinks you're a pushover. You know what the
And they
Pakistanis
thought
say
we are
about India?
pushovers. They thought we are pushovers, that we'll only talk about our par ki ladai till the time a Balakot happened and a surgical strike happened. Then they knew that their BAP is here and this is not going to happen. And I want to talk about that in greater detail, but I want to play out these two images on your television screen. So that is Tahawwar Hussain Rana earlier. And this is the latest image of that Pakistani-Canadian terrorist Tahawwar Hussain Rana. He studied at the Hassan Abdal Military Academy in Pakistan. He's 64 years old now. 17 years earlier, that man was not only wrecking multiple locations in our country, but he was also celebrating. Now, according to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the information they were able to gather, when he saw 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks images on his television screen as he watched the terror plan unfold, he celebrated and he wanted every Pakistani terrorist who was killed in India and Kasab to be awarded Pakistan's highest national military award. So for him, it was victory. For him, it was Ghazwa-e-Hind against Kafirs. And now that so-called warrior of that Ghazwa-e-Hind is in shackles as he's brought to India. And hopefully that entire military jihad complex will be brought to its knees, Tara Karta. That is the need of the hour, to punish Pakistan's state-sponsored radical Islamist terror through evidence put out in public domain for the world to see, madam.
Absolutely, yes. I think a lot, like I said earlier, a lot of these details, which a lot of them we already know, but this is all going to come out now. It's going to come out in headlines. It's going to be shared with partners in the US. It's going to be shared with Israel. Don't forget, Israelis also died in this attack. So this is now an international investigation, and the Pakistanis have a choice of either cooperating, which of course is wildly quite impossible, but or understanding that they're going to get cornered on this, that this is not on. But there's one thing I'd like to say in response to what you were talking about. You remember there was the Ajmer Sharif blast and the Hazrat Nizamuddin blast. There were a trail of blasts before this to show that there is this Hindu terror taking place, right? That was very worrying. But on the other hand, I also want to emphasize that within the government at the time, when I was also there at the time, there was a very, very clear understanding that this was Pakistan. The Joint Intelligence Committee in which I was there, we put that report out that, look, there's going to be an attack on a hotel, 5-star hotel in Bombay. This warning was given. And this was based on, like I said, limited intelligence. And the problem throughout always is that intelligence is not shared when it should be shared. There's a lot of questions that has to be asked there also, both outside and within the country, in the light of what you just said. What were those blasts which took place? How did they happen? Where did this Hindu terror thing come from? So those are very serious.
There's so much more I would like to share on this broadcast right now and learn from you on this broadcast on Hindu terror, because we have three of the finest voices, Sushant Sareen, Dr. Vikram Singh and Dr. Tara Kartha joining us on this broadcast. You know how Ishrat Jahan suddenly became Bihar ki beti, the politics with terror in our country, how that charge sheet was changed, how the Samjhauta Express charge sheet was changed, how the Malegaon blast, and I had Mr. P.K. Jain with me on the broadcast, Dr. Vikram Singh. Mr. P.K. Jain, as additional DGP of Mumbai, he was just a short while back telling me on the broadcast, and we'll play out his reaction. He was telling us how they had investigated, they had arrested Pakistani terrorists, they had arrested Pakistani elements in response. Arif Kasmani, incidentally, in Samjhauta, had already been named. In the UN, he had been named, and that was changed to Hindu terror. Malegaon, the real terrorists were permitted to go scot-free. Wrong chaps were taken into custody, according to Mr. Jain. This just goes on to show that we were playing with fire that burnt us, leading to 166 deaths in Mumbai.
You're very right. Now is the time. In fact, the time has come now for the NIA to investigate these flip-flops and these somersaults, because these somersaults are not innocent somersaults. These somersaults are insidious and anti-national. I repeat, insidious, venomous, and anti-national. And every dramatist persona who has participated in this insidious design needs to be shamed and exposed and charge-sheeted. What were the compulsions of saying Ishrat Jahan is a Bihar ki beti? For what? And for what reason? For vote bank politics? For appeasement? Well, that's a different story. But the fact of the matter, what Mr. P.K. Jain said, I feel that for every Mr. P.K. Jain, there are 10 more indignant police officers and investigators who feel that a national wrong has been committed. And the time has come now, the NIA need to expose every such move of every person. And what are the compulsions of saying Hafiz G, Osama G, and whitewashing the black deeds of terrorists and anti-national elements. The time has come now, but I wish there were more Gaurav Sawantjis who would raise this topic at least and say that a national shame and a wrong has been committed. Well, indeed, I do hope that this is taken forward. The MHA and the IB are listening to your program and they take a step forward, and this is made a part of the investigation plan also.
Sir, I know of an undersecretary in the Ministry of Home Affairs who was burnt with cigarette butts. I've spoken to him. I had spoken to him, and Sushant Sareen knows that he was burnt with cigarette butts to change his charge sheet or his inputs on Ishrat Jahan. But that's a debate for a separate day. We know of how Samjhauta, and like today, like we're anchoring a long bulletin today, we were anchoring when Samjhauta was suddenly from Arif Kasmani, Sushant Sareen, from Arif Kasmani being responsible for Lashkar-e-Taiba being responsible. Suddenly it was mentioned that it was so-called Hindu terror. It just blew up in India's face, whatever was the plan. And perhaps there was an attempt to term 2611 as that same Hindu terror. It just goes on to show that a lot more needs to be investigated, Sushant Sareen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're talking about Mr. Mani. But, along with him, there was another very distinguished IB officer, Mr.
Yes.
Rajendra Kumar, if I'm getting his name correct.
Special IB commissioner.
He was harassed so much. He was one of the most intrepid IB officers in this country. And these guys went after him with a vengeance. Why? Because they wanted to give a clean check to the Pakistanis. Can you believe this? And this is the way you carry out investigation. This is the kind of loyalty you show to your country. I think these people should be ashamed. They are as shameless as the people in Pakistan are, for having done what they did. But, you get hold of you do an investigation, you get to the bottom of it, and then finally you see some person coming in and sabotaging the case. You're talking about Ishrat Jahan. Let's talk about that criminal Sohrabuddin, right? Yes. These guys pretended as though Sohrabuddin was some kind of Mother Teresa. He was a third-rate criminal indulging in gun running.
Gun runner.
One of the problem is that
one of the finest police officers was put in jail.
You destroy your entire fight against terrorism.
Yes. And we'll talk about these cases in the next several days. And I hope we have an opportunity to talk about these cases in the couple of days. But Dr. Tara Kartha, what information will we get from this villain? The first image that you see exclusively on India Today of Tahawwar Hussain Rana then and now. What do we hope? What are those gaps, Dr. Tara Kartha, that we can fill in the enemy within and the enemy across, madam?
You can't think what happiness it gives me to see this character caught, because this is something very personal to us. Okay, what can he be done is during the time that Headley was in India, all communications with Headley was never from Pakistan. It was from Pakistan to Rana, Rana to Headley. That link I want to know. I'm not sure where those tapes are. I'm pretty sure the US has a bunch of them. Whether they've shared them or not, I don't know. I'm hoping we have something on that, but that is going to be a focus on what this man spoke. There was other targets also, which I perhaps am not at liberty to state, but there were other targets also being recce. And let me tell you something: the Lashkar has a habit; they are very thorough. They are, after all, a Pakistani army trained outfit. They do a minimum of 3 to 4 thorough reconnaissance before an attack. So that is their tradition. Second thing, like you said, is who you've got a bunch of people whom we already know from his David Headley's testimony, that he was assisted by somebody met him at the airport, somebody helped him with XYZ. But there are other people who were involved in this. So we need to get that clear. So especially I want to, I mean, what I would personally really like to know is, how is it that such a bunch of ex-army people, ex-Pakistan army people,
Yes.
forget the regular army types, they were thoroughly involved, that is, we know. There were a bunch of ex-army people involved. Yeah, this guy, Headley, Abdul Rahman, who studied in Pakistan military academy. I mean, what
Yes.
is, it's amazing. It is, if I were an agency doing something, I mean, agencies do these things, right? I would recruit someone else. These are all ex-army guys. It's
No, that
amazing.
would just, what would that indicate, Dr. Vikram Singh? Dr. Tara Kartha is absolutely right. And they're Abdalis, they're all Abdalians, from Hassan Abdal Military Academy, especially David Coleman Headley and Tahawwar Hussain Rana. And perhaps it was this band of rogues in touch with other Abdalians. They were in a group with other Abdalians who were serving in Pakistan Army, and that too would shed more details. And the FBI has a lot more details. Perhaps that India-America cooperation, Dr. Vikram Singh, will shed more light on the role of Pakistani state elements here.
We have several dimensions to the issues raised by Dr. Taraji, in the sense that there is a close user group in Pakistan known as Abdalians. And both David Coleman Headley and also Tahawwar were a part of this insidious group. They exchanged the beheadings, they exchanged the various jihadi literature, and also why they failed in the Denmark attack on the newspaper. Also, it was the close user group duly supported, aided, and abetted by the Pakistani deep state, as also the ISI. Now, coming to the fact that what was the roadmap for attacking India, because that is their only oxygen and the lifeline. And therefore, 1,000 cuts was in fact that they were planning to, and Ghazwa-e Hind. Now the Pakistan involvement and also the tapes, I'm sure America has them, I'm sure we have them, but this is too sensitive a matter even to be discussed and disclosed. You had Mr. Behera on your show. You have had opportunity of speaking to Mr. Sadanand, but I'm sure they are on very, very comfortable wicket. And I'm sure a befitting investigation with an appropriate and a scientific roadmap and an investigation plan will see to it that the ends of justice are ensured. And indeed, he goes the same way as Kasab did.
Sincerely hope so. Former Home Secretary G.K. Pillai, he said India has enough evidence to ensure he's convicted. According to him, enough evidence even to ensure that this man responsible for 166 deaths of Indians, Americans, Jewish people, Europeans, he's actually sent to the gallows. I hope, India has that kind of evidence and it comes out in public domain. But is it also a fit case in your appreciation, Sushant Sareen, for Pakistan, once that evidence comes out in public domain of involvement of Pakistani state elements, to put Pakistan once again back in the Financial Action Task Force grey list and ensure no more World Bank funding for the terror state?
Yeah, Gaurav, as far as the Financial Action Task Force is concerned, the Pakistanis have already pulled a fast one on them. So forget, even if you remove the 26/11 attacks and how they've been dealing with, the people involved in these attacks inside Pakistan, even if you keep that aside, the very fact that the Pakistanis have simply not lived up to their commitments which they made to the FATF on getting holds of of people like Masood Azhar. They claim, they've told the FATF, we have no idea where this guy is. On Sajid Mir, who incidentally used to come on a cricket visa, apparently. There are some reports that he would come on a cricket visa, and there are idiots in India who want to play cricket matches with Pakistan, and including people who have served in the police services, who say, no, aane do yaar, these guys don't do anything. So Sajid Mir incidentally came as that. The Sajid Mir, who they had declared dead, they dug him out from the grave, they've sentenced him, but nobody knows in which jail he is. Nobody has any idea where he is. So they have actually taken eyewash of action. And I think the Indian agencies need to work double time to ensure that we apprise the FATF on what the Pakistanis, how the Pakistanis are hoodwinking the FATF, how they have not changed their entire association with these terror organizations, how they are continuing to fund this entire terror finance network, allowing it to continue unhindered. I think we need to start raising hell over that. It might take some time before we drag them back to the grey list. But I think we should not give any quarter to these terrorist nation on our border. We should not give them any quarter. We should not cut any slack for them. Despite there'll be these friends of, the Pakistanis in India who will rather get India, sucked into a vortex of terrorism than have India take any action against Pakistan. I think rather than bother about them, the government in India should have a very clear policy of how to go after Pakistan in every sphere, every domain, at every level.
Oh, absolutely. Dr. Tara Kartha, Dr. Vikram Singh and Sushant Sareen for joining me here on this India Today special broadcast. Many thanks. We'll be tracking this story very, very closely.